An enterprise have controlled environment, overseeing controls, and there are business process controls or enterprise process controls and application process controls. To examine the process controls, we can use a control matrix. There are some principles behind a control matrix. If you look at an enterprise capturing data, it starts with events and transactions. It's captured by people and technology. There are people, systems, sets of rules that's followed, and there are enterprise processes that support these systems, and the processes are supported with a series of activities which comprise process, and they're conducted by people. Then there are technological systems that follow sets of rules. There are information processes to support these systems, and each process has a series of activities conducted by technology. The PCAOB is a control framework. A control matrix is a tool designed to evaluate and assess potential effectiveness of internal controls. In a given process, enterprise process and information process, there are control goals that must match with the control plans. When management and independent auditors perform this assessment about processes, they use a control matrix. But this control matrix is a template and could be varied depending on the control framework of the enterprise. So there are enterprise or business processes, there are application processes. The enterprise processes are conducted by people on events and transactions. They require process controls. They follow enterprise rules. These processes applies to each functional area and can have specific processes in there. But there could be also processes that cut across more than one functional area. These functional specific areas could be finance, purchasing, sales, and personnel, where there are specific processes applied to these functional areas. Application processes are conducted by technology. They generate data from events and transactions. They require application controls and follow data rules. Each technology and software is embedded in them with specific processes. They're functionally generic. This application can cut across more than one functional area. If we take, for example, a business or enterprise process, there are control plans, and this control plan must meet with the expected control plans of the enterprise. They meet three goals: to become effective, efficient, and to secure the resources. So examples of enterprise process control plans are designing source documents to become effective and efficient, obtaining written approvals to become secure, pre-formatted screens, online prompting to accept, reject, and edit orders, populate input screen with master data, compare input data with master data, conduct program edit checks like identification, automate data entry, which are captured through OCR and RFID, enter data close to where data is originating, like online real time. So these are making the enterprise effective and efficient. Then there are also digital signatures to make the activities secure and retain authenticity of these activities captured. Control plans have three goals: to make data accurate, valid, and complete. There are certain control plans such as document design, pre-formatted screens, conducting limit checks, turnaround documents, populating input screen with master data, assist in making data accurate and valid. Digital signatures assist in making data accurate and valid. And obtaining written approvals assist in valid data. Conducting reconciliations, for example, on batch totals with document counts, assist in having valid data and complete data, and conducting sequence check, assist in valid and complete data. Confirming acceptance, assist in ensuring data are complete. So the basis for control matrix and how control plan works starts with policies and procedures, and these policies and procedures are designed by the senior leaders in the enterprise. And then there are control plans that are recommended and are implemented by the managers. There are operation processes and information processes. And these operation processes have three goals: to be efficient, for example, be timely and less costly; to be effective, to meet the vision and objectives of the enterprise; to secure assets and data. And then there are information processes which has three goals: to make data valid by updating master data, make data complete by updating master data, and making data accurate by updating master data. So where to install internal controls? Here are some examples. In the design, enterprise can have pre-formatted scripts when designing the scripts. In inputting data, it can ensure that these input data are compared with master data. In data entry, enterprise can decide whether it's a manual entry or automated entry, and can conduct programmed or manual edit checks on data such as reconciliation. There could be prompting of information when data entry, edits, and rejecting is conducted. Approvers could be instructional by people or by formulas that is embedded in the technology, in the technological systems, like credit checks. Procedures to accept or reject data. It can identify to authenticate the customer, supplier with two-factor authentications, have signatures, digital signatures with SMS authentication or biometric comparison, asking for visual images of digital signatures, and these signatures are secured with sublocations, with a public key when entering data by customer or supplier, and decrypt with a private key when the enterprise examines the information that was received. The private key has to be protected and should be locked in a computer, and accessing the computer should be protected with authentications such as visual identification and passwords. And then data storage, with the data, this information are manual or digital, and how often this master data are updated. There are flowcharts used as a basis to design control matrix. First is flowcharts show a relation between controls and processes. It can also allow to determine the nature and extent of controls to install on various processes. A flowchart can guide on the functional cycles, like sales cycles. Can also expand an enterprise process to show individual activities, like sales order process, sales delivery process, and sales receipt process, and then can expand into the activities that are conducted under each process. Flowchart can accommodate processes as they are in an enterprise and pinpoint some of the deficiencies in controls and some of the strengths in controls. The flowchart data flow diagram symbols are typically used in drawing flowcharts. For documents, manual key, punch cards, data flows, and connectors. Then for general purpose input-outputs, to show logical flows, to show data disk, start and end of a routine process, process or a system, manual process, an entity and a decision. They have unique symbols that can be used in flowchart diagrams. If you take, for example, a flowchart diagram, there's a starting point, and then the data, the processes, and when there's manual key, the manual key is shown by a certain diagram, flowchart diagram, and then there's process activity, event data update shown by a rectangle, and then master data update is shown with a cylinder. Documents are shown in another diagram form. The process activity, event data update, accepting for further processing. The manual activity or manual processes, and then process activity, manual keying, they all have different flowchart symbols. So the nature and extent of process controls and application controls depend on three aspects: control environment, privacy controls, and the risk appetite of the enterprise. The control environment is about the level of integrity and ethics is displayed in the enterprise culture, to what extent those enterprise rules and data rules are followed, they are bent or not followed, the geographical location, the political aspects, cultural aspects, and religious aspects in the geography, firm demographics, the industry membership, and the firm size can influence the control environment. Policy controls are about the duties segregation, the personnel policies, IT gender controls, and monitoring controls. Then the risk appetite is to what extent an enterprise avoid risk and on what they avoid risk, accept risk, share risk, and mitigate risk. So all these are interdependent and they inform each other, and therefore they should be looked in an integrated, in a holistic manner rather than individually. There are steps in the design and evaluation of the control matrix for process controls and application controls. If you take a flowchart diagram, in that flowchart diagram, we can look at the processes that are followed, and based on the processes that are followed, an independent auditor can evaluate whether these processes match with the expected control plans and whether they are adequate, sufficient. If they are present, we can indicate with a symbol such as P. If they are missing, we can indicate with a symbol such as M. And then we can note down those symbols as they are and then revisit them to examine whether additional controls should be included in the enterprise processes and information processes, or whether some should be taken away or some should be revised and updated. The step one is to specify control goals. It should specify operation process control goals in relation to enterprise becoming effective, efficient, and secure. Second in that is specifying information process control goals in relation to making sure data are valid, complete, and accurate. The information should be updated in the master data for completeness and accuracy. Second is to identify the recommended control plan for the business processes. Under evaluation, identify the present control plans and annotate them on this flowchart. Start with the upper left column on the system's flowchart and identify control that seems to accomplish one or more control goals. And each process symbol in the flowchart should be associated with one or more controls. And we need to ask the question, does this process involve a control to help the enterprise to protect a resource? Or does this process involve a control to improve accuracy of the input? These are examples of two questions. And this question should be in relation to the enterprise process goals, that is to become efficient, effective, and to secure resources. And in relation to information control goals, they should be to ensure data is valid, accurate, and complete. So once we have examined the control goals and match with the control plan that we have, we can also ask additional questions to improve on controls. And for example, in entering customer orders, we can ask the question, can the sales rep enter these customer orders on their laptop for more timely inputs with pre-formatted screens, online real-time data entry? If so, what controls are necessary? Sales reps authorization. You need to ensure that data is accurate and complete, and orders are checked for credit approvals. We need to annotate the system flowchart to identify the present controls and then the missing controls, so that the control plan could be updated and revised to have more robust controls. We can also analyze the system's flowchart for further risk exposures. Are these present control plans sufficiently meet the control goals or the control matrix? Are there missing control plans? What controls must now be included to further decrease the risk to the risk appetite level of the enterprise? So here's an illustration of the present controls are in place, and they are shown with the letter P and numbering them as they appear. And in addition to this, in this flowchart, there are no missing controls. That means the expectation matched with the actual. But if there are missing controls, this would be shown with the letter F. But these letters could vary depending on the auditor who is using the flowchart, but this is an illustration. Here is an illustration of the control matrix, matching the recommended control plans and then checking against this recommended control plans, whether they are in place in the enterprise, and they've been shown for the process controls and then for the information process controls. As for the enterprise process controls, as to ensure effectiveness, efficiency, and security, and for the information process control, validity, completeness, and accuracy. So there could be suggested improvements to address the errors and inefficiencies in data processes. It could be, for example, in relation to input data into processes, recommending to automate and eliminate manual keying, to increase validity, correctness, and accuracy of data. To do that, to use barcodes and OCR, to encode documents by scanning, and obtain data using radio frequency identification, RFID data chips. The business events such as purchases may be automated using internet or electronic data interchange with encrypted data, so that there's only the data are entered only once, And once they are entered into and accepted by the ERP system, they can be populated, and data entry errors are therefore minimized. Auditing internal controls or financial reporting on process controls and application controls. The purpose of internal controls or financial reporting is discussed in Auditing Standard number 5 of PCAOB. It is to assess the enterprise assessment of internal controls effectiveness or financial reporting, leading to preparing general purpose financial reports, that is for stakeholders, and one or more material weaknesses in an internal controls means that they are ineffective for financial reporting. Auditor use a recognized control framework to conduct the internal control audit. When planning the audit, the auditor must consider what to and how much to audit, assess the risk of significant accounts, disclosures and assertions that goes with it, scale the audit along with the enterprise complexity and meeting control objectives, address the risk of fraud leading to material misstatements, use audit work performed by others to decrease the auditor's work that's already conducted, and consider materiality in conducting the audit. Auditor uses a top-down approach to audit internal controls or financial reporting. First is to identify enterprise-level controls, looking at the control environment and controls management can override certain controls, therefore should be revisited, and then examine the procedures adopted by the enterprise for period and financial reporting. Second is to identify significant accounts and disclosures and assertions that goes with it. Third is to understand the likely sources of potential misstatements. Fourth is to select controls to test. Fifth is to test controls for effectiveness of designs and operations. Sixth is to obtain evidence in relation to risk that are encountered. Seven is to consider audits that would follow in the future. 8 is to evaluate control deficiencies. 9 is to form opinion based on the evidence obtained from all sources, such as identifying enterprise control levels, identifying significant accounts and disclosures, then understanding likely sources of potential misstatements, then about the control tests conducted, and the evidence that was collected in relation to the risk encountered in these controls.